Hello, my name is Mr. Chipman. This is 5.5 Environmental Effects on Phenotype. This is the last section of Unit 5, Heredity. Unit 5 is one of those sort of weird units that gives students trouble. At least it gives my students trouble. So I encourage you to make sure you're looking over it, rewatch the videos. If you have questions, please leave me a comment down below. Love to answer students' questions all the time. Let's look at 5.5, starting with this concept of phenotypic plasticity. Phenotypic plasticity, think of the word phenotype, right? It's just physical characteristic. Plasticity has to do with sort of like moldability, if you want to think about it that way. This is where you have the same genotype can exhibit multiple phenotypes depending on environmental conditions, which is a fancy way of saying that the environment can affect the phenotype of an organism, right? You see that here. Traits over there, red, purple, blue. Environment's one thing. The environment and plasticity represents these phenotypes being changed. Highly variable plasticity, strong genotype by environment interaction is just some wonkiness. There's a lot of examples of this. Let's look at some of these examples that are very important examples. One is for humans. Great. Humans show a lot of plasticity because of our environment. You can see here the average height and average weight of individuals from 1760 there on the, what happened to height? I love how they didn't start measuring women height until the early 1900s. Interesting. This is fascinating. There's so much here. We're just going to look at this though. So what's happening here? Well, you have a dip. I don't know why that dip exists. That's interesting. But notice what happens to average height. It's going up. What's happening to average weight? It's also going up, right? And what is changing about human environment in the last 100 years? Well, two things: grocery stores and hospitals, right? Not to say that these things were new, but access to nutrition, access to healthcare is going to change that, right? People are going to be bigger. People are going to grow more. It's not like we're evolving. We're not evolving in the last 100 years. We're just properly nourished, and that's going to change our height and our weight, right? So that's what you see here. The environment has caused that shift. I am interested in this, though. If you have any thoughts, leave me a comment. What happened from 1825 to 18, whatever this represents, that caused a downshift in the average height of men? Just curious. Here's another example of phenotypic plasticity. And so in this case, you have hydrangeas, everyone's favorite flower. Maybe not, I don't know. But depending on the pH of the soil, the plant is going to have a different flower color, which is interesting, right? And so some people can force this, like pour things like Coke or something in your plant, and you have a sticky soil blue flower. And then the more alkaline or the more basic the soil is, you have more pink. This is phenotypic plasticity. The genes don't change, the environment did. Here's another example. There's our friend, the Arctic fox. What's happening to make Arctic fox white? Well, it's snow. And so when the snow starts to disappear and there's less of it, the coat of this animal will also change. It's an example of phenotypic plasticity. Why would something like this come to be? Right? Well, it gives the fox an advantage. The fox is a predator. It also could be a prey because of its size. And so it allows it to blend in with its background. You'd expect to see something like this in environmental changes. Here's an example. This is skin color of people. Why does skin color of people vary across the world? Well, having darker complexion, having more melanin in the skin allows for more protection against UV light, where it's going to be greatest near the equator. And so people who are indigenous from the equator zones tend to have darker complexion than those that are further away from it. That's an example of an environmental condition, right? We all have the same genes, but we have different expression of those genes based on our origin. The world's a lot smaller than it was thousands of years ago, but you get the idea. Those genes are still embedded into our genome, and we tend to express them. Let's look at practice FRQ in this case. Many species exhibit phenotypic plasticity in response to environmental factors. Describe how a single genotype can result in multiple phenotypes. You could talk about pleiotropy here if you wanted to, but you could also mention how environmental factors change that. Basically, you could use natural selection. If after Unit 7, you'd probably be more comfortable with that. But that's a way to talk about that. Explain how environmental conditions can affect gene expression, resulting in phenotypic plasticity. And so gene expression has to do with the making of a protein, and those proteins are going to be changed based on pH, there's several different factors that can account for that. And explain how phenotypic plasticity can provide a selective advantage in certain environments. We mentioned several of those, right? We mentioned we mentioned the fox, and so yeah, there's a couple things here. There's the answer to that if you want to pause the video and look at it. Man, I hope this was helpful. This is all Unit 5. We have 3 units to go in AP Biology before we are done for the year. If you're one of my students, this represents the end of the first semester. I don't know where you're tracking, but if you have questions for me about anything in Unit 5, give me a comment down below. Thanks for watching.